The rain in Silver Creek, Washington didn't just fall. It hammered against the world, like it was trying to break in. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in November. The kind of night that felt heavy with secrets. Inside Fire Station 42, the air was still. The heavy scent of diesel and damp turnout gear hung in the garage bay, a smell that usually meant work, but tonight, it just meant waiting. Caleb Thorne sat on the edge of his bunk in the quiet dorm. He was 32 then, a man built of sharp angles and rough stubble, with eyes that had seen too much wreckage for someone his age. He held a cold cup of coffee, staring at the dark window, listening to the wind howl. He had been a widower for 2 years. The silence of his empty house was too loud, so he took the extra shifts. He lived at the station, because the station didn't have empty chairs facing him at the dinner table. Then, the bell rang. It wasn't the jarring klaxon of a fire alarm. It was the soft, buzzing chime of the safe haven box. The station had installed it a year ago, a temperature-controlled drawer where a desperate parent could surrender an infant anonymously, no questions asked. The bell had never rung before. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. He set the coffee down, the liquid rippling in the cup. He moved into the hallway. The other guys were still asleep. It felt like he was the only person awake on Earth. He walked into the lobby, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, casting long, sterile shadows. He approached the metal panel on the wall. His hands, usually steady enough to thread an line in a moving ambulance, were trembling. He opened the interior door of the box. There was no crying, just a soft, rhythmic hitch of breath. Inside the padded bassinet lay a bundle wrapped in a thick gray wool blanket. It wasn't a baby blanket. It looked like someone had cut up a heavy coat. Caleb reached in, his calloused fingers brushing against the fabric. He pulled the bundle out, holding it against his chest. The baby was tiny, maybe 3 days old, a girl. She had a shock of dark hair and eyes that were squeezed shut against the harsh station lights. Caleb looked for a note. He looked for a reason, but there was nothing. Just the baby, damp from the humidity of the night, and a single silver locket pinned to the wool. He popped it open with his thumb. It was empty. "Hey there," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You're okay. You're safe now." The baby shifted, opening her eyes. They were dark, deep pools that seemed to look right through him. She didn't cry. She just stared at him, her tiny hand reaching out to grasp the rough cotton of his station t-shirt. In that moment, the ice that had encased Caleb's heart for 2 years cracked. He felt a rush of terrifying, overwhelming warmth. He knew the protocol. He had to call Child Protective Services. He had to hand her over to the system. The police would come. Social workers would come. She would become a case number. But as he stood there in the flickering light of the lobby, listening to the storm rage outside, Caleb made a silent promise. He walked over to the dispatch radio, but his hand hovered over the button. He looked down at the girl. She had been left in the cold, abandoned by the only world she knew. He knew exactly how that felt. "I'm not letting you go," he whispered to the room. "I'm not letting you be just a number." The storm battered the glass doors, but for the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel the cold. He felt the weight of a life in his arms, and terrifyingly, he felt hope. 18 years isn't a long time. It's a blink. It's a series of moments that slip through your fingers like water. For Caleb, those years were measured in the milestones of the girl he named Maya. The legal battle to adopt her had been a war of its own. A single man, a firefighter with a dangerous job, trying to adopt a safe haven baby. The state had fought him. They wanted a traditional family, but Caleb had fought harder. He sold his motorcycle. He took parenting classes until his eyes crossed. He pleaded his case before a judge with the same intensity he used to fight infernos, and he won. Silver Creek watched them grow up together. They watched the rugged, stoic firefighter learn to braid hair, his large, clumsy fingers fumbling with pink elastics until he got it right. They watched him sit in the front row of ballet recitals, surrounded by mothers, cheering the loudest when Maya tripped, got up and kept dancing. Maya grew into the spitting image of that stormy night. Intense, quiet, and beautiful in a way that commanded attention. She had Caleb's stubbornness, though they shared no blood. She was artistic, filling their small, wood-paneled house with sketches of charcoal and watercolor. One brisk October afternoon, a week before Maya's 18th birthday, Caleb stood on the porch. The air smelled of burning leaves and pine. He watched Maya in the driveway, working on the old truck he had bought her. She was covered in grease, a smudge of oil on her cheek, wrestling with a wrench. "Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey kid," Caleb called out, leaning against the railing with a mug of tea. Maya looked up, blowing a stray curl of dark hair out of her face. "I know, Dad, the bolt is rusted. It's stubborn, like you." Caleb chuckled, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. "I'm not stubborn. I'm persistent. You ate chili 3 days in a row because you refused to admit you made too much." She countered, grinning. He watched her turn back to the engine. A pang of melancholy hit him so hard it nearly knocked the wind out of him. She was leaving soon. College applications were scattered across the kitchen table. Seattle, Portland, maybe even California. She was going to fly, and he was going to be left in the nest he had built for her. He walked down the steps and stood beside her. "You know," he started, his voice turning serious. "You don't have to fix this old thing. We could look for something newer for graduation." Maya wiped her hands on a rag and looked at him. Her eyes, those same dark eyes that had stared at him in the fire station lobby, were fierce. "I don't want something new, Dad. I want this. It has history. It has character." She paused, looking down at her boots. "Besides, you fixed me. I can fix a truck." The air between them grew heavy. They didn't talk about her abandonment often. It was a scar they both carried, but they rarely touched it. Caleb reached out, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "You weren't broken, Maya," he said softly. "You were just misplaced. I was the one who was broken." She leaned into his hand, closing her eyes for a second. "You think she ever thinks about me?" The question hung in the autumn air. Caleb stiffened. He had dreaded this question for 18 years. He knew the curiosity was natural, a biological pull he couldn't fight with love alone. "I think," Caleb said carefully, choosing his words like he was walking on a roof that might collapse. "I think that it would be impossible to forget you." Maya nodded, accepting the answer, though it clearly didn't fill the void. She went back to the wrench, turning it with renewed force. The bolt gave way with a sharp screech of metal. "Got it," she whispered. Caleb smiled, but his eyes drifted to the street. A black sedan drove slowly past their house, darker and more expensive than the usual pickup trucks of Silver Creek. It slowed down near their mailbox, then sped up and disappeared around the bend. Caleb felt a prickle on the back of his neck, the same instinct that told him a floor was about to give way in a burning building. He watched the empty road, a cold feeling settling in his stomach that had nothing to do with the autumn wind. The day of Maya's 18th birthday brought a storm that mirrored the night she arrived. Rain lashed against the windows of the small house, turning the world outside into a blurred watercolor of gray and green. Inside, however, it was warm. Caleb had cooked steaks, and a chocolate cake sat crookedly on the counter. Baking was still not his strong suit. They had just finished dinner. Maya was laughing at Caleb's attempt to wrap a gift that turned out to be a set of professional sketch pencils. The mood was light, the kind of comfortable joy that comes from years of inside jokes and shared silence. Then, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a neighborly rap. It was 3 distinct, heavy knocks. Caleb frowned, expecting anyone. "No," Maya said, looking up from her sketchbook. "Probably just Mrs. Higgins complaining about the truck parked on the street again." Caleb stood up, wiping his hands on a towel. He walked to the front door, the wood floor creaking under his boots. He unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The wind gusted in, carrying rain and the scent of expensive perfume, something floral and sharp that didn't belong in Silver Creek. Standing on the porch was a woman. She was soaked, her trench coat dark with rain. She was beautiful, with high cheekbones and eyes that were terrifyingly familiar. She looked to be in her mid-30s, her face pale and etched with a nervousness that made her tremble. Behind her in the driveway sat the black sedan Caleb had seen a week ago. Caleb didn't need to ask who she was. He felt it in his marrow. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He gripped the doorframe, his knuckles turning white. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice low and guarding. He didn't invite her in. He stood in the doorway, a human shield blocking the view of the living room. The woman swallowed hard. Her hands were clutching a purse so tightly her fingers looked skeletal. Does Maya Thorne live here?" Caleb didn't move. "Who's asking?" The woman took a step forward, then hesitated. She looked past Caleb's shoulder, her eyes searching the sliver of space behind him. "My name is Alina. I think I made a mistake. A long time ago." At that moment, Maya walked up behind Caleb. "Dad, who is it?" Caleb tried to shift to block her view, but it was too late. Maya peered around his arm. The silence that followed was deafening. It was louder than the rain, louder than the thunder rolling over the mountains. Maya looked at the woman, and the woman looked at Maya. It was like looking in a mirror through the haze of time. They had the same jawline, the same brow, the same dark, intense eyes. Alina let out a small, strangled sob. She brought a hand up to her mouth. "Oh, God, you look just like him." Maya froze, the color drained from her face. She looked from the stranger to her father, panic rising in her chest. "Dad," Caleb felt a surge of protective rage. This woman had left a baby in a cold metal box. She had been a ghost for 18 years, and now on the day Maya became a legal adult, she shows up. "You need to leave," Caleb said, his voice dropping to a growl. He began to close the door. "Wait," Alina cried out, jamming her expensive leather boot into the jamb. "Please, I didn't know where else to go. I just want to talk. Please." Maya put a hand on Caleb's arm. Her touch was light, but it stopped him cold. "Dad," she whispered. "Wait." Caleb looked down at his daughter. He saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw the burning curiosity, the desperate need to know the first chapter of her own story. He knew he couldn't protect her from this. The fire was already inside the house. He sighed, a sound of defeat and steel. He opened the door wider. 5 minutes, Caleb said to the woman. "You get 5 minutes to explain why you abandoned her." The living room felt smaller with Alina in it. She sat on the edge of the plaid armchair looking out of place among the worn furniture. And Caleb's firefighting gear hanging by the door. She declined the water Caleb offered. She just couldn't take her eyes off Maya, who sat on the sofa next to Caleb, her knees pulled up to her chest. I was 16. Alina began, her voice trembling. She didn't look at Caleb, she spoke only to Maya. I lived in Seattle. My parents, they were strict, religious, prominent. She took a shaky breath. When I got pregnant, they hid me away. They told me my life would be over. They told me the baby would ruin everything. They arranged for a private adoption, a closed one. I wasn't supposed to know where you went. Caleb crossed his arms, his jaw tight. So how did she end up in a box at my station? Alina looked down at her hands. The night you were born, I panicked. I knew the people they picked. They were cold. They didn't want a child. They wanted an accessory. I couldn't do it. I ran away from the clinic with you. I got on a bus. I ended up here. She looked up, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I didn't have money. I didn't have food. I was a child myself. I saw the safe haven sign. I knew. I knew if I kept you, we'd both starve on the street. I thought I was saving you. Maya was crying silently. Caleb felt his anger soften, just a fraction. He saw the terrified 16-year-old girl inside this wealthy woman, but the protective instinct was still roaring. Why now? Caleb asked. Why 18 years later? Alina reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. My parents passed away last year. I found the old records. I hired a private investigator. I've been successful, Maya. I own a gallery in San Francisco. I have a big life, but it's empty. I never married. I never had another child. She leaned forward, offering the envelope to Maya. There's a plane ticket in there, and a brochure for an art institute in California. I saw your drawings online. The school posted them. You have a gift. I can give you the life I should have given you. I can pay for everything. You can come with me tonight. The room went dead silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Caleb felt like he had been punched in the gut. This was his nightmare. The rich, biological mother sweeping in to rescue the poor girl from the small town. He looked at Maya. He saw the conflict warring in her eyes. San Francisco, art school, a mother. You can't just buy her, Caleb said, his voice straining to stay calm. She has a life here, a life in a small town. Alina shot back, a flash of defensiveness in her tone. I can give her the world. I can give her her heritage. She's my daughter. I'm her father. Caleb said, standing up. His height filled the room. I changed the diapers. I sat up through the fevers. I taught her to drive that truck. You gave birth, Alina. That's biology. I gave 18 years of my life. That's being a parent. Alina stood too, and now she's an adult. She can choose. They both looked at Maya. The tension was suffocating. It was a choice between the past and the future, between the blood that created her and the sweat that raised her. Maya looked at the envelope on the table. It was heavy, creamy paper. It smelled like money. Then she looked at Caleb. She saw the gray in his beard, the burns on his arms from years of pulling people out of fires, the terrifying sadness in his eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. Maya stood up slowly. The rain continued to hammer the roof. But inside, the storm had broken. She reached out and picked up the envelope. She ran her thumb over the expensive paper. Alina smiled, a hopeful, desperate look. The car is outside. We can go get your things. Maya looked at Alina. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for telling me. I've wondered about you every day of my life. I wondered if I was unwanted. You were never unwanted. Alina sobbed. I know, Maya said, her voice gaining strength. She turned to Caleb. She walked over to him and took his rough, scarred hand in hers. I know I wasn't unwanted because he wanted me. She turned back to Alina, still holding Caleb's hand. You made a choice 18 years ago. I don't blame you for it. You were a kid. You did what you had to do to survive. Maya placed the envelope back on the table. She slid it across the wood toward Alina. But I'm not going to California with you, Maya said firmly. This isn't a train station where you can just hop off and back on 18 years later. You're a stranger, Alina. I have a father. He's standing right here. Caleb let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, his vision blurred. He squeezed Maya's hand so hard he thought he might crush it, but she just squeezed back. Alina looked shattered. She stared at the rejected envelope. I just wanted to help. I wanted to know you. You can know me, Maya said, but on my terms. I'm applying to colleges nearby. I'm staying close to home if you want to visit. If you want to get coffee sometime, we can try. But you don't get to be mom. That title is earned, and you missed the shift. The room was quiet. The rejection was gentle but absolute. Alina nodded slowly, wiping her face. She realized she couldn't buy back time. She picked up her purse. She looked at Caleb, really looked at him for the first time. She saw the love radiating off him, a fierce, protective aura that she had never possessed. You did a good job. Alina whispered to Caleb. She's incredible. I know, Caleb said. She did most of the work herself. Alina walked to the door. She paused, looking back at the girl she had left in a box so many years ago. Happy birthday, Maya. Goodbye, Alina, Maya said. The door closed. The lock clicked. The sound of the engine started outside, and the black sedan faded into the rainy night. Maya let out a long, shaky sigh and leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder. Caleb wrapped his arms around her, hugging her tightly, burying his face in her hair. "I thought you were going to go." Caleb choked out. Maya pulled back and looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "Dad, you taught me that family isn't about whose DNA you have. It's about who shows up when the alarm rings. You showed up." She picked up her new sketch pencils from the table. "Now, are we going to eat this cake, or are you going to cry all night?" Caleb laughed, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Both. Definitely both." They sat back down at the kitchen table. The storm outside no match for the warmth within. It was a house built not on blood, but on a promise kept in the dark. 18 years ago. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and check out the channel for more real-life stories of love, family, and resilience.